I want you to picture something for a second. It is entirely possible that right now, as you're listening to this, you are drinking your morning coffee out of a mug with Vincent van Gogh's The Starry Night printed on it.
Oh, absolutely. Or maybe like a tote bag you use for groceries.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Or it's a poster hanging in your dentist's waiting room. I mean, I actually have a pair of socks with those swirling blue skies tucked into my drawer.
Yeah, they're literally everywhere.
It is so ubiquitous, so deeply woven into the background of our daily lives that it has almost become, I don't know, invisible.
It really has. We see those swirling blues, those incredibly bright yellow stars, and our brains just automatically categorize it as, famous, pretty painting.
Right, just a nice aesthetic.
Exactly. We register the aesthetic, but we move on without actually looking at what is happening on the canvas.
And that's exactly what I was doing until I started reading through the stack of research for today's deep dive. We're looking at some really extensive material from Anita Louise art.
Which is fantastic, by the way.
So good. And the deeper I got into these sources, the more I realized that this incredibly familiar image, this thing we casually put on coffee mugs, is hiding a mind-bending level of complexity.
Oh, yeah, completely mind-bending.
We're talking about a secret code of advanced physics, an accurate map of the cosmos, and, honestly, an absolute textbook case of imposter syndrome.
It forces a complete reset of how you view the painting. Our mission today is to strip away that overwhelming familiarity for you.
Yes.
We are going to look at the hidden layers of empirical science, the precise astronomy, and the raw psychological survival tactics that Van Gogh literally stitched into this canvas.
Because the true story behind the Starry Night is just so much heavier and, frankly, so much more fascinating than the romanticized myth of the tortured artist.
Oh, 100%.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to even begin to understand what is happening in that wild, swirling sky, we have to ground ourselves in physical reality. We need to know exactly where Vincent van Gogh was standing when he looked out at it. So let's set the scene.
Right, the context is absolutely vital here. So we are in June of 1889. Van Gogh is living in the Saint-Paul-de-Moselle asylum in the south of France.
And it is important to clarify that he was there voluntarily, right?
Yes, very important. He had just suffered a series of incredibly severe mental breakdowns over the previous months. I mean, this period includes the very famous incident where he mutilated his own ear.
Right, the ear incident.
Yeah. So he enters this facility seeking treatment, seeking some kind of stability.
And he's confined to the asylum grounds. But the doctors do permit him to paint.
They do. They give him access to a room with a second-story window.
And looking through the source material, I actually saw a photograph of what that view looked like. And it stopped me in my tracks.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
There is a massive glaring element completely missing from the Starry Night. I'm looking at the photos of his actual room, and the window has these thick, heavy iron bars. But when you look at the painting, the landscape is wide open. So did he just, leave the bars out because they ruined the view?
Well, what's fascinating here is that it's much deeper than that. You have to put yourself in his psychological state. He is confined. His daily life is strictly regulated.
Right.
He can see the rolling hills of Provence. He can see the vast night sky. But every single time he looks out, his vision is violently interrupted by thick iron.
Oh, wow.
By actively choosing to remove those bars from the canvas, Van Gogh is doing something profound. He is refusing his confinement.
So it's not just, modern-day photo framing.
What do you mean?
Well, it's not like taking a selfie for social media and carefully cropping out the messy laundry on your floor so your life looks perfect to your followers.
Oh, right. No, not at all. Cropping out laundry is about vanity. Removing iron bars is about psychological survival.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The painting ceases to be a simple landscape and transforms into an act of profound resistance. He is using his imagination to override his physical reality. It is a manifestation of sheer willpower to say, my body is trapped in this room, but my mind is out there in those hills.
He's basically painting an escape hatch. And if he's mentally editing out the things he absolutely refuses to see, like the iron bars, it naturally brings up the flip side.
Which is?
What is he adding to this landscape that wasn't actually outside his window?
Yes. This is where we get into the mechanics of post-impressionism. The Starry Night is not a photograph.
Right.
It is a highly curated collage of reality, imagination, and memory. For instance, the sweeping hills and the stars were indeed visible from his east-facing window. but the village at the bottom of the painting.
Yeah.
The one with the glowing windows and the tall church spire, that was completely invisible from his vantage point.
Wait, he couldn't see a village at all?
Not that village. Art historians analyzing the painting have noted that the church spire is heavily modeled after the architecture of his Dutch homeland.
You're kidding.
No, it does not match the architecture of the French countryside where the asylum was located at all.
Oh, wow. So he's, hundreds of miles away in France, locked in a psychiatric facility, and he's actively painting the church from his childhood into the French landscape.
Exactly.
I mean, I always assumed Impressionist art was about going outside and painting exactly what the light was doing right in front of you.
Well, you're actually defining Impressionism perfectly. That is, capturing the fleeting optical truth of light in a specific moment. But Van Gogh was a post-impressionist.
Okay, so what's the difference?
For post-impressionists, the goal wasn't just to capture what the eye sees. It was to capture what the soul feels. They blended past and present, memory and observation, to express a deeper inner truth.
So the Dutch church is...
He was building a bridge between the comfort of his memories in the Netherlands and his isolated, frightening reality in France.
That makes a lot of sense. He's inserting something comforting. But then right in the foreground, taking up the entire left side of the canvas, is this massive, dark, twisting structure.
Yeah.
The cypress tree.
Yes. The cypress tree.
Now, the sources mentioned that in Mediterranean culture, the cypress is a very specific symbol.
It is. The cypress is heavily associated with mourning and death. Its roots actually grow in a way that doesn't disturb coffins, so you will very often find them planted in cemeteries in that part of the world.
I need to stop and process this.
Yeah, it's heavy.
Wait, so he's stuck in an asylum, painting his childhood home out of nostalgia, and then he just slaps a giant symbol of a cemetery right in the front of the frame.
It seems that way.
That sounds incredibly bleak. Is this just pure despair overpowering the comfort?
It seems that way initially, but look at the physical structure of the tree in the painting. It starts at the very bottom edge of the earth and twists violently upward, completely breaching the sky. It acts as a physical and spiritual bridge connecting the grounded earthly village to the swirling cosmos above. Van Gogh was deeply influenced by this symbolism, but he didn't view it as an endpoint.
What do you mean?
Well, in his letters, he wrote something incredibly revealing. He said, "Just as we take the train to get to Tarascon or Rouen, we take death to reach a star."
Wow. We take death to reach a star. Let that sink in.
Right. It changes the entire emotional frequency of the painting. The expert consensus is that this isn't a morbid fixation on the grave. It's a highly hopeful meditation on the afterlife.
Ah, I see.
The upward thrust of the tree isn't about being dragged down into the dirt. It's about a literal journey. It's the passage from the heavy, suffering earthly realm up into the celestial.
And if that tree is the vehicle for a journey to the afterlife, it makes complete sense that it's physically pointing up into that sky.
Exactly.
But when I look at the sky he's supposedly traveling toward, it doesn't look peaceful. It doesn't look like a calm, restful heaven.
No, not at all.
It looks violent. It's boiling. But the source material reveals that this boiling sky is actually hiding a shocking scientific reality.
It really is. And we should start with the most grounded part of that sky. Look at the brightest white star in the painting, located just to the right of the cypress tree.
Okay, I have it pictured.
Astronomers have mapped the night sky exactly as it would have appeared in June of 1889 over Saint-Rémy, and they prove that this specific brilliant light isn't a star at all.
What is it?
It is the planet Venus.
So he wasn't just throwing paint at the canvas, inventing a chaotic sky. He was tracking celestial bodies with total accuracy.
Meticulous observation. Venus was unusually bright that spring, and he documented the universe exactly as it appeared outside his window.
That's amazing.
He anchors this dreamlike, collaged painting in observable, empirical, astronomical reality.
But the accurate placement of Venus is just the appetizer. Here's where it gets really interesting. I'm going to need you to walk me through the physics of this.
Oh, I would love to.
So in 2004, physicists were analyzing images taken by the Hubble Space Telescope of a star expanding into dust and gas. And it reminded them so much of the Starry Night that they actually decided to run mathematical analyses on the painting itself.
Yes.
And they discovered that Van Gogh's swirling sky perfectly aligns with the Kolmogorov theory of turbulence. Now, our notes say this is a complex mathematical principle from 1941 detailing how energy flows through fluids.
Correct.
How exactly does a painting from 1889 match a physics equation from 1941?
This is the part that leaves modern scientists entirely baffled. Andrei Kolmogorov was a Russian mathematician who finally formulated an equation to describe turbulence.
Okay.
Turbulence is essentially the chaotic flow of a fluid. Think of a fast-moving river wrapping around a rock, creating those smaller and smaller swirling eddies.
Right, I can picture that.
Kolmogorov figured out the exact mathematical probability of how kinetic energy transfers from a large swirl down into smaller and smaller swirls until it dissipates.
Okay, I'm following the river analogy. But how do you find kinetic energy in a dry, static oil painting?
That is the brilliant part. The physicists analyzed the digital images of the painting, and they specifically measured the luminance, the relative brightness of the different paint colors, pixel by pixel across those swirls in the sky.
Just measuring the brightness.
Yes. And what they found is that the probability distribution of the luminance in Van Gogh's brushstrokes mathematically mirrors the exact probability distribution of fluid velocity in a turbulent state.
Hold on, you're losing me. The probability distribution of fluid velocity. Translate that for me.
Sure, yeah. Think about pouring a splash of heavy cream into a hot cup of black coffee. You don't stir it yet.
Okay.
You just watch the white cream bloom and twist and curl into the black coffee. That chaotic swirling pattern isn't actually random.
It isn't.
No, it's governed by strict mathematical rules of fluid dynamics. Van Gogh's paint, the way he varied the brightness of the blues and yellows, is doing the exact same mathematical dance on the canvas that the cream is doing in your coffee.
Oh my God.
He perfectly captured the unseen physical mechanics of how energy moves through a fluid.
That is staggering. I'm trying to wrap my head around the timeline here. He painted this in 1889. Scientists didn't have the math to define this until 1941.
50 years later.
I mean, as I'm thinking about this is like a 19th century musician just messing around on a piano, relying entirely on feeling, and accidentally writing a pop song that perfectly maps out the human genome decades before genetics even existed.
That is a perfect analogy.
How is it possible that a man suffering from severe, debilitating mental illness could intuitively grasp the complexities of fluid dynamics?
Well, it suggests that human intuition can tap into the underlying rhythms of nature in ways we just don't fully understand. Van Gogh wasn't just having a visual hallucination.
Right.
When he looked at the night sky, he wasn't seeing empty space. He was seeing air and light as living, dense, moving entities. He perceived the atmosphere as a fluid, and his brain was sensitive enough to translate the mechanics of that fluid onto a canvas with uncanny mathematical precision.
He's literally painting the invisible laws of nature.
Yes.
He is seeing the universe at a resolution that the rest of humanity wouldn't reach for another 50 years.
It's incredible.
And you would think, right, that perfectly rendering the physical behavior of the universe while simultaneously capturing your own raw emotional truth would leave an artist feeling incredibly proud.
You would think so.
You'd think he'd step back from the easel, put down his brush, and realize he had just created a masterpiece. But reading the letters he sent to his brother Theo about this painting, his reaction was the exact opposite.
It is one of the most tragic ironies of art history. In those letters to Theo, Van Gogh essentially dismissed the Starry Night. He referred to it as a mere study.
A study, like it was just a practice run.
Exactly. He claimed the painting, and I quote, says nothing to me.
Unbelievable.
He thought the stars were completely exaggerated, the style was a step backward, and he viewed the entire piece as an unsuccessful failure.
That is physically painful to hear. To create arguably the most famous painting in the world, a mathematical marvel, and look at it and feel failure.
Yeah. But if you look at how he actually painted it, the technique itself tells a story of intense struggle. The sources detail his heavy use of impasto.
Remind me what impasto is.
Impasto is a technique where you apply the paint incredibly thickly to the canvas. He isn't just using delicate, smooth brushstrokes to create an illusion of a sky.
Right.
He is using palette knives, squeezing paint directly from the tube, working with this frantic urgency. The paint stands up off the canvas.
So he's building actual physical architecture out of the paint.
Yes, the impasto creates a heavily textured surface that literally catches the light and casts physical shadows. It makes the painting vibrate with energy.
Wow.
And then you have his color palette. He is heavily relying on a stark, deliberate contrast between incredibly warm, radiant yellows and deep, cool, midnight blues.
Like the classic complementary colors.
Exactly. He's not using those colors because that's exactly what the sky looked like. He's using them because they clash and vibrate against each other when placed side by side. It evokes an immediate, almost unsettling emotional response.
The painting is holding so much tension. You have the deep, heavy longing of that cypress tree reaching up. You have the profound mathematical perfection of those swirling stars. And you have the crushing physical reality of his isolation in the asylum.
It's all there.
So what does this all mean? When I look at that tension between his genius and his feelings of total failure, I have to ask, is it possible that the exact same intense hypersensitivity that allowed him to see the mathematical turbulence of the entire universe is the very thing that made him hate his own work?
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Like his brain was capable of perceiving absolute divine perfection in nature, so any physical attempt to capture it on a two-dimensional canvas was always going to look clumsy and flawed to him.
That is a fascinating way to frame it. The gap between the infinite beauty he could perceive in his mind and the frustrating physical limitations of oil paint and canvas.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate imposter syndrome. He could see the mechanics of the cosmos, but he was trapped using primitive tools to try and document it. He felt he couldn't do the universe justice.
That makes so much sense.
But ironically, it is exactly that tension, that desperate, struggling attempt to reach beyond human limitation that gives the painting its enduring power.
The struggle itself is what we are connecting to when we look at it. We are seeing a man trying to pull down the sky.
Beautifully said.
So let's bring this all together for everyone listening. The next time you are standing in a museum, or the next time you pour coffee into your Starry Night mug, remember that you aren't just looking at a piece of decorative visual wallpaper.
Definitely not.
You are looking at a masterclass in post-impressionism that seamlessly blends a painful present with a comforting past. You are looking at a meticulously accurate astronomical map of the planet Venus. You are looking at a mathematical marvel that perfectly illustrates fluid dynamics decades before scientists had the equations to explain it. And, most importantly, you are looking at a defiant psychological escape from a room with iron bars.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the Starry Night proves that art has the unique power to bridge the seemingly unbridgeable gaps in our human experience.
Absolutely.
It bridges the gap between empirical science and human imagination. It connects deep nostalgic memory with a harsh, isolated reality, and it connects profound earthly despair with the hope of something eternal in the stars.
It really is a window into a singular soul. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over on your own.
Always a good idea.
In the source material from Anita Louise Art, there are related articles exploring the tortured artist myth. We as a society love to romanticize the idea of the mad genius. We tend to assume that immense suffering is the secret, necessary ingredient to achieving greatness.
It's a very seductive narrative, the idea that you have to be profoundly broken to create something profoundly beautiful.
Exactly. But looking at the incredibly precise, rational math in those swirls, looking at the vibrant, deliberate choices of those complementary yellows and blues, and understanding the highly purposeful psychological omission of those iron bars.
It changes things.
It makes you wonder, did Vincent van Gogh achieve greatness because of his immense suffering, or did he achieve greatness in spite of it?
Wow.
Was his art not a product of madness, but simply the only window he had left that didn't have bars on it?
That is a powerful question. It completely shifts the focus away from his illness and places the emphasis firmly on his incredible, meticulous resilience.
It really does. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey today. We hope you enjoyed exploring the physics, the astronomy, and the mind behind the masterpiece. Until next time, keep looking closer at the things you think you already know.
And remember that sometimes the most profound scientific truths are hiding right in plain sight.
Even on a pair of socks.